Today we're going to talk about compound meters. Before we get into any of the motions that go along with conducting compound meters, we're going to take a minute and remind you of some of the music theory things that you've learned. We're going to talk first about simple meters, the meters that we've been using up to this point. You'll remember from your theory training that simple meters are any meter where the beat is divided into two equal parts. For example, a quarter note gets divided into two eighth notes. And we've been using certain meters that are simple meters: 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4. You'll also recall that during class I've been asking you over and over and over again, how many beats are in the measure? What type of note gets the beat? What's the type of note that gets the subdivision of the beat? Well, those questions are going to become very important in this chapter. You'll remember in simple meters that there are different songs that you can kind of remember to remind yourself about what these meters are. For example, if you're in a 2/4 meter and you divide each beat into two equal parts, you get 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. Or Frère Jacques, Frère Jacques. Or if you're in a 3/4 meter and we divide each beat into two equal parts, we get 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Song might be The First Noel. Or if we're in a 4/4 meter and we divide each beat into two equal parts, we might get 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, which is like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Twinkle twinkle little star. So we know and are pretty comfortable with our simple meters. But now we're going to shift a little bit into the compounds. Whereas in the simple we had two equal parts, in a compound meter we're now dividing each beat into three equal parts. So here's our beat right here, and we divide it into three equal parts. Something to take note of with compound meters. Compound meters have beats just like simple ones do. But each beat is divided into three equal parts. And if that's the case, then each beat ends up having a dot by it. Dot, dot. 1, 2. So if we've got a dotted quarter note, and we divide that beat, that dotted quarter beat, into three equal parts, we get 3 eighth notes, as opposed to the 2 that we had over here with simple meters. So we have this subdivision of 3 equal parts. And that's going to play into and factor into what we do with meters. I remind you that with our simple meters, the top number in a simple meter always indicated the number of beats. The bottom number always indicated the type of note that gets the beat. Well, now we're going to put a little twist on it. Because in compound meters, the top number does not equal the number of beats. It indicates the number of subdivisions in each measure. The bottom number indicates the type of note that is getting the subdivision in that whole measure. So for example, if we're dealing with a 6/8 meter, then that's going to mean that there are 6 eighth notes in every measure. Now, before we move on into the 6/8 and the 9/8 and the 12/8 stuff, we need to do a little math. Sorry, you got to do a little math. When we talk about measures up to this point, we've talked about 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. We've talked about having 2 beats in a measure, 3 beats in a measure, and 4 beats in a measure. Well, if we do the math, and we do a little simple multiplication. 2 times 3 equals 6. And lo and behold, 6 happens to be the top number in that compound meter. Or if we do 3 times 3 equals 9, 9 happens to be the top number in this one. And of course, 4 times 3 is 12, so we get the top number in this one. What we're now saying is the number of beats times the number of subdivisions of the beat gives you your compound meter. So, this gets confusing to some people because they say, well, how many beats are in the measure? Well, there's 6. No, there's not, because you're looking at the number of subdivisions of the beat. This level. How many of these at this level, the dotted quarters, are giving us our number of beats? So, in the 6/8 version, there are actually 2 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And just like our regular conducting pattern of 2, we can start thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Beat, 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 beat. 1, 2. So, 6/8 has 2 beats in it. You might remember the song Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Take me out to the ball game. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. If there are 3 beats in the measure, then we're dealing with a 9/8 for a meter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3. And what you'll notice is you could get a fun song like Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring. Da 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 dee da dee da da dee da da. 1, 2, 3. If we're dealing with a 12/8 measure where there's 4 beats in the measure, 4 dotted quarters, we'll get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4. Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens. So we have 2, 3, and 4 beats, just like we had in simple, but now we're dividing them into 3 equal parts. Now that you have an idea about the theory of compound meters, let's talk about the motions that we have to do in order to make compound meters work. Just like we've done with simple meters, our meter patterns don't change. We still use the 2 pattern, the 3 pattern, and the 4 pattern. What changes is the subdivision that we think in our heads, and what we call letting the hands breathe in order to allow for the extra 1/8 notes that are used, or I guess the extra subdivisions would be a better word to use. So instead of doing 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and, we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or if we're doing a 3 pattern, rather than doing 1 and 2 and 3 and, we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Or if we're in a 4 pattern, rather than doing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, we will do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You'll notice that there's an increase in drag with the baton, and there is also increased wrist motions. And I'll talk about both of those things a little bit more in just a moment. Before we do that, we need to recognize a few things about rebounds. Number one, rebounds in compound meters tend to be larger and slower. So we'll hit the spot and then drag up, making a larger motion and a slower motion. At the same time, those rebounds tend to be slightly faster and harder. In other words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this is done by having a slight wrist click. The wrist is very active in all of this. We click down and pull, and click and pull, and there's this dragging motion with the tip of the baton that comes because we are larger and slower on the rebound, even though we're clicking harder and somewhat faster. Harder, harder, drag, harder, drag, harder, drag. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So those are the aspects of the rebound that make the baton tip go down. And if I were to come up close and let you see my wrist from the side, you'll see that I'm going to have break, 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 break. There's this click that's happening there, and it's coming because of the wrist. Now the other thing that we talk about here are letting the hands breathe and keeping the subdivision in your head. You should, especially at this point in time, until you're really feeling the compound meter, have in your mind 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Whatever meter we're in, you have to keep that subdivision going in your head. If you forget, you run the risk of getting into a simple meter, and 2, and 1, which is not going to give your ensemble enough time to respond. The other part, again, about letting the hands breathe is what we're talking about with the wrist and the drag. If I get rid of my baton for just a moment and we watch it, imagine that we're just having intakes of breath and then an exhale. Or the other direction. And so we let that nice wrist motion and hand motion breathe a little bit. The book talks about how during preparatory beats, when we're coming in on fractional entrances, that we do that already. We've talked about in the last chapter where we will rebound slower for entrances that are farther away. Dee-da, dee-da-da. That type of thing. Well, the same thing happens in compound meters. We just do it consistently rather than just on the fractional entrance. Dee-da, dee-da-da, 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 dee-da-da. That motion allows for this breathing of the wrists, breathing of the hands, rather than a more stiff 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. So, when we're doing our compound meters, just a quick review. Number 1, we keep the subdivision in our head. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, whatever that is. We let our rebounds be larger and slower. Our clicks be harder and faster. And our wrist clicks happening consistently on the beat so that we can see where the beat is. When we do it with a baton, you will see that the tip will drag very slightly. And that will allow for a clean compound meter.